So today we're going to talk about the planets and bring them in to the signs, because what's the real power of astrology is that all of these different aspects, these different qualities of signs, planets, houses, and aspects, they're always so interlinked and interconnected. And this is why if you get a canned astrology report that says your Venus is in this sign and Venus is in this house, you're never going to get the full picture, because actually Venus is connected to more than just that one house that it's in. It's also connected to usually about 2 houses that it rules. Different planets rule other planets, and these rulerships actually represent energetic linkages between these particular parts of our lives and these particular energies within ourselves. So this is why it's so important to get to know the quality of each of the signs, the quality of each of the planets and the houses, and get the feeling for them so that they're in your blood. And then when they interconnect with each other, you flow into those relationships, which are really unique to each person and unique in each chart. You can't have any canned reports give you any truly in-depth information. And because everything's so computerized now, there is so much of that. And it's not to say that there isn't some value in it. Absolutely there is. But there's a tremendous amount that gets missed when you don't look at the chart as that living whole.
So you're talking about like the monthly horoscopes, like where, it might talk about your sign, but it's not necessarily as true to like without.
Yeah, those are generally really just complete balderdash. I'd use a different word, but
yeah,
because it's
generic, right?
Yeah, they're very generic, and it's not possible to make predictions based on a sun sign, first of all.
Okay.
It just doesn't work that way, because that's really a whole episode that we'll do at some point, explaining how all of this works and talk about the great art of ass pulling, which is what these astrological predictions that are based on the sun signs, the horoscope predictions. There are certain ways to do them, which could occasionally be applicable if you read your rising sign, assuming that your rising sign is at the beginning of that sign, or if your rising sign's at the end of the sign, you're going to read the next sign. Sometimes if they're using a particular method, there's going to be some truth to it. But there's a few different methods to generate horoscope reports, and one of the most valuable ones is ass pulling. Basically, pull something out of your ass.
I was like, is this a short form for something, or is it literally ass pulling?
It's a short form for something. But there are techniques, and the horoscopes, they came in because it was a way to generate attention from the public. Let's just give them this kind of this empty calorie thing that lets you know this restaurant exists. we're gonna just have cotton candy out on the sidewalk, and hopefully you'll come in and try our gourmet meals. But it isn't really real. It doesn't work, and it's degenerated into what I feel is something that gives astrology a bad name. But when I'm talking about the canned reports, I'm talking about something that actually has some value, which is more if you go and you get your chart done and you get a computerized report about your chart.
Okay.
Because your sun is in this sign, your moon is in that sign, your Mercury's in this sign, and these are the houses that they're in, and you might even talk about some of the aspects between your charts. But the point is that each of those things that are looked at as something separate, they're all connected to each other. So if you have Venus in the 7th house, Venus is also potentially square Saturn and trine Jupiter. And that's going to have a meaning. And Venus in your 7th house, Venus is going to rule 2 other houses in your chart. It's going to influence 2 other areas of your life. Your computer-generated report is not going to be able to take all of those variables and give you an integrated perspective on your life. So that's why it's so important to get, and you'll understand this more once we start talking about the way that these things are interrelated, which we're actually going to do today, because as we study each planet, we're also going to talk about the signs that planet has a natural relationship to.
Okay.
So now we have the screen being shared again, and we're back to Wikipedia's list of planetary symbols at this point, as opposed to the signs. Symbols for the 12 signs. So up at the top, we have the symbol for the sun. Now, the interesting thing about the planetary symbols is the old traditional planetary symbols make use of basically 3 symbols. And the three symbols, or actually four symbols if you include the arrow. So there's the symbol of, well, the moon, the crescent. There's the crescent of spirit, and the circle of personality, and the cross of matter.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the arrow of desire or action. So basically these are the symbols that all of the traditional planets are made up of, those basic symbols in a certain order. And it's an underlying key to the meaning of the planet. So if we look at the sun, we have the circle of personality, but within it we have the dot in the center of the circle. So that dot, it's sort of it's the crescent of spirit on a higher level almost. Okay. So that particular point represents our pure individuality, our pure spirit, our pure immortal consciousness, which is the awareness, which is considered to be the awareness of I am. So no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, whether you're in the physical body or you're not in the physical body anymore, getting ready to come back into a physical body, there's only one constant, and that constant is I am. You may not even know what you are. Sometimes there's points where we're so bathed in that oneness and that unity, all we know is that we are. We don't know our identity. Mm-hmm. So in order to have an identity, there has to be some definition of that identity, which is that's the true definition of personality. It's the rest of the sentence at the end of I am. I am such and such, which defines what my personality is. But for the sun, we're talking about a very long-term personality. We're talking about a long-term path of development of the expression of I am. And so that's the symbol of what the symbol of the sun means, is the point at the center of the circle.
So does that mean our sun sign is like our personality? Is that what we're kind of saying here? Like,
well, that is what we're saying, except for the fact that the sun sign is also a connection to our point of eternal consciousness that transcends our personality. So our sun sign is really about the evolution of that eternal consciousness through the experiences that personality undergoes. Mm. So people think of the sun sign as being personality, and the sun is considered to be the expression of who I am. Mm-hmm. The sun sign is a lot more than personality, because the sun sign is our longer term path of soul development. And it's how we explore and expand and express that identity as a creative being in the larger sphere of the universe. So it's much more than just a simple personality, because the sun symbol includes personality, but it also has that point within the center, which is the pure point of consciousness. It's the pure point of spirit. Now, the crescent of spirit, that's the symbol for the moon, it is a spiritual symbol, but it's more, I would call it, even though it's called the crescent of spirit traditionally, I would call it more the crescent of soul. Because a spirit and soul are two different things. Spirit is that eternal life force, that eternal sense of consciousness of I am, and that seeks to express, but is pure life force and pure eternal beingness seeking to express itself. Whereas the soul receives and retains experiences and memories and feeling. So the soul is the next level down from spirit as we're heading towards matter. Now the circle around the point at the center of the sun, that's pure spirit. The point in the center is pure spirit. The circle around it is receiving the impulses of pure spirit and developing a personality. But the circle is really the third participant in this three-way dance. So we have the dot, the point, pure spirit, then we have the crescent, which is soul, and then we have the circle around the outside, which is the personality, which is the continuing evolution of the soul. Our soul holds the memory of the most impactful experiences that we've had. It holds the desire and the longing of what our pure spiritual essence wants to create and express. So if we look at the sun and moon symbols together, we have, in a sense, almost a full picture of the three facets of our whole identity. Mm-hmm. You look at the planetary symbols. So the sun wants to express. The sun is pure consciousness seeking to express. Now, if we take it to the signs, because I want to integrate this so that we learn to integrate the chart in the long run. Every planet is going to rule one or two signs. And by ruling that sign, it means that planet is expressing its most natural form of expression in that particular sign. And it also has a capacity to influence anything else in a person's chart that is in that sign. So the sun rules Leo. So now if we go back to the sign of Leo, Leo is fixed fire. So it's this stable, eternal, enduring fire. Well, what else is a stable, enduring fire than the sun? The sun is there for much longer than we can really fathom. It doesn't last forever, but it's the most enduring form of fire, a star that exists in the universe. And it gives the sign of Leo this sense of the need for expression, a kind of pure state of consciousness that watches. And this is where the people who have sun in Leo have a capacity to watch what's going on and perceive the next level of expression on a mass level, because the sun is not just the center of the solar system, but the sun is, in a sense, the ruler of the entire solar system. Everything that goes on and all the planets is really completely under the sun's control when you think about it. Because if the sun disappears, that would be a massive transformation. Everything would turn into, extreme zero. There would be all the forms of matter, all the forms of life on the earth, and if there are subtler forms of life on other planets, which I would not be surprised there are, those would vanish. So the sun is this enduring, fixed fire that is giving life to everything. And the sign Leo is trying to do exactly what the sun is doing in this world. Now, every planet has a sign that it's at home in, that it rules. So sun rules Leo, and every planet has a relationship with 4 different signs or more. The sign or signs that it rules, that planet is considered to be in domicile when it's in that sign. So if somebody has sun in Leo, their sun is in domicile. It means it's at home. That's what the word domicile means. And there's also always a sign that brings out the absolute best in that planet if it shows up in that sign. But it's never the sign that rules. Well, actually, one of them is in the sign that it rules. Most of them, it's a different sign. So the sign in which the sun is exalted is Aries. So that means if somebody has sun in Aries, that sign will drive the person to bring out the absolute best in the sun. So if you look at Aries, Aries is the beginning of spring. That's when the life force is just getting this massive kickstart. It's the beginning of the entire zodiac, and the zodiac is our vehicle for the evolution of the soul. So it's Aries both exalts that pure form of spirit in bringing in this incredible life force. It also exalts the personality circle around the dot, so that it's saying, I want to be, let's begin life. I want to be, and I want to give. So it's going to draw the most out of that planet when it's in that sign. So this is giving us another understanding of Aries. And when we get to the point where we're looking at the planet that rules Aries, we can look at the planet that rules Aries and the planet that is exalted in Aries and get another deeper understanding of the sign of Aries. So if we move to the moon, at the crescent of spirit, and as I mentioned, the moon being symbol of the soul, or that moon symbol representing soul, represents the reception of our impressions and our memories. So when the moon's in the birth chart, it relates very strongly to our early childhood experience and to what we absorbed from our mother when we were small, but it also represents the memories of our soul. So the moon sign shows the sign we were before we're the sign we are now. So in my system of third stage astrology, I've discovered that we stay the same sun sign for a long series of lifetimes. We go through 3 stages with each sign, and each stage is a completely different personality type, which we get into elsewhere, right, at this point. And then the moon is the sign we were before we're the sign we are now. And we went through those 3 stages, which we also re-experience, because the moon is all about memories and reflection and re-experiencing things. As we go through our sun sign, we're re-experiencing the stages of our moon sign. And again, if you look at our solar system, the moon is constantly reflecting the light of the sun. So we have the old sun reflecting off of the moon towards us. So we have the literal physical symbol that the sun sign we used to be is being reflected back to us, and we're reliving that light again. Mm-hmm. So the moon is also, again, it's very much about feelings and emotions. So what sign might you guess or imagine the moon might possibly rule or be at home in?
Maybe a water sign. I don't know.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Yes, it's a water sign.
But if I remember what a water sign is, I don't know. Could it be any, I don't know, maybe. I know Scorpio and Pisces are water.
That's right. They are. Yep.
I think Cancer is too.
That's right. You got the 3 water signs. That's excellent. So which one do you think the moon rules?
Cancer?
You're right. Excellent. 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 You got 3 gold stars there.
I'm trying. Very complex.
Yeah. So see, you could feel that. You felt your way to the answer there. You're starting to get this stuff.
Would you say the moon is more the subconscious too?
Yes. Definitely.
I'm trying to connect it to like conscience and subconscious. Like when you talk about past lives, I would say that's, or like past feelings, that I would say moon is more subconscious. Is that how you would relate it?
Oh, definitely. Yes. The moon is definitely rules the subconscious for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because most of the time we're not feeling our soul all the time, but it's always there. It's in our subconscious. All the memory is stored in subconsciousness, and the moon is the planet of memory.
Okay.
The moon actually is the planet of long-term memory. So short-term memory astrologically is not ruled by the moon, which is very apparent in my chart because I have a really powerful positive moon and I have a tremendous, incredible long-term memory. And my Mercury is a mess, which is the next planet we'll get to, and it's short-term memory. My short-term memory is horrible.
And this over multiple lifetimes? Like this is through all of your lifetimes, your soul lifetimes?
The memory?
Yeah.
The moon can connect to that, yeah. And I mean, even in my case, I know that I actually have memory training from other lifetimes. I know that my soul is used to remembering and to remembering a lot of my own soul history and even a lot of the histories of the peoples that I've been incarnated into in other lifetimes. So yeah, the moon will hold a lot of things that can last for a very long time. And again, it can depend on what sign the moon is in. It's going to color how that moon operates. Because if the moon is in a sign that's really very logical, rational, say for instance, moon in Gemini may not hold the memory the same way. It's not going to hold a lot of very emotionally felt memory because it's through the repetition of a certain kind of emotion that memory really builds long-term memory.
Okay.
Yeah, so moon ruling Cancer, and Cancer is the cardinal water sign. So it's goal-oriented emotion. So the moon has that quality. Moon is also a very nurturing planet. So when the moon is strong in people's charts, they can often have a very strong maternal or paternal instinct. And so it wants to look after us, wants to look after our emotional needs, is referenced, there's the memory of all of the past experiences that also motivates Cancer to nurture things. Let's make sure we're going to draw on what we remembered before. We're going to make sure things turn out well for the future. Let's make our emotional goals positive. That's what that sign and its ideal sense is about. And so if a person has moon in Cancer, they're going to be expressing all of that. Because again, their moon will be in domicile if the moon is in Cancer. Now, the sign in which the moon is exalted is Taurus, which is interesting because we're going through the zodiac in order here. And Taurus is very unconditionally loving by nature, that sign. And it also is grounded because the moon needs a certain amount of grounding in order to really bring out its best potential. It also needs to be motivated by love. And Taurus is a love-oriented sign. So between being stable and loving and affectionate, that brings out the best qualities of the moon. It allows us to use our memory in a way that is constructive for the present, for what we can build in a stable earthly sense. So this is why we have the best, we have the moon, best is coming out of the moon when it's in Taurus. Taurus is drawing the best out of that planet when it's found there. And it also indicates that that sign has, again, has a sensitive or nurturing edge to it. It's not just the pig-headed bull that a lot of the coffee table astrology books often say Taurus is. Even though Taurus can be self-protective and start acting that way, it's not all there is to that sign. Okay, so now we go down. The next planet we have after the moon is Mercury. And we're going, aside from the moon, we're looking at the planets from the vantage point of the sun out through the solar system. The reason we look at the moon second, and astrologers always list it second when they're making a list of the planets and where the planets are in our chart, is because the sun is so primal to our identity and the moon is very secondary to our identity. And then we develop the faculties of the planets after that. So the sun and moon, we're looking at all our personal identity. Once we get to Mercury, we're now looking at our personal abilities or aspirations. So Mercury has all three of the basic symbols. It has the crescent of spirit, has the circle of personality, and the cross of matter. So that's very interesting because generally in astrology, Mercury is said to be the rational mind, logic and reason, our communication skills, the way we communicate and speak with other people, which is all very true. But the interesting thing is that in Jyotish astrology, or the Hindu or Eastern astrology, Mercury is considered to be very, very spiritual planet, if not the most spiritual planet. And that makes sense to me in a lot of ways, because if we don't have conscious, rational awareness, we really don't have anything. We lose things. We can't separate it out from everything and live only according to that perspective on life, which is what too much of the Western world has done. But nonetheless, the importance of being consciously aware of the truth and what's really going on is super important. So this is why Mercury actually includes the awareness of all the levels. And it can view all these levels quite dispassionately when it's really well developed. So Mercury rules. Now, when we get into the planets that are not the sun and the moon, they all rule two signs. All the basic traditional planets rule two signs. So Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo.
Okay.
So they're both mutable signs, which makes sense because Mercury's in the moment looking at the awareness, looking at the consciousness of what's going on. Mercury is not supposed to be goal-oriented, and Mercury is not supposed to be fixed. Mercury is supposed to be awareness, and awareness is adaptable and open in the present moment. It's awareness that is focused on pure intellect. So if we look at Mercury as the ruler of Gemini, Gemini is a mutable air sign. So that makes perfect sense that Mercury is going to rule that sign, and that Mercury is going to be at home in that sign. In Virgo, we have a mutable earth sign. So there we have Mercury in a very adaptive way, applying itself to the physical world, which is what a major part of our mental constitution does all the time. It's always taking stock of what's actually around us and how do we organize it, how do we make it work the best way we possibly can. And Mercury is the only sign that is exalted in one of the signs that it rules. So Mercury is exalted in Virgo. So if someone has Mercury in Virgo, their Mercury is not only at home, but it's also exalted. Virgo brings the best out in Mercury. So of course, basically we're trying to analyze the physical world, and the mind loves that. The mind loves to take things apart and put them back together. Actually reminds me of my dad when he was a kid. He had Virgo rising and Sun in Gemini. And he loved to take everything apart and put it back together. And at first he didn't know how to put things back together. So there were all piece things. Every object in their home was in pieces at some point in time. And he blew up the basement at one point, but he figured it all out. So that was the mercurial quality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this also talks about those signs having this analytical quality, whereas Gemini is sort of a purely intellectually analytical. Virgo is more practically analytical. So now the next sign is Venus. Now Venus is interesting because it's like Mercury without its crescent. So it's the circle of personality and the cross of matter. And if we think about what people think about Venus as the goddess of love and beauty, and generally speaking, our desire for love and beauty is for most of us, it's a reflection of personality and body. Material world. That's how you appear in the material world. However, Venus also does have its spiritual side, because in a birth chart, Venus has to do with our love nature and how we view relationships, but it also has to do with our idealized self. So in many ways, the sign where you have Venus in your chart represents who you want to be. Now, some people have Venus in the same sign as their sun. So yes, I want to be who I am. But some people can romanticize qualities of another sign if their Venus is not in the same sign that their sun sign is. So that's an interesting thing to look at. And it's also what we consider to be attractive. So what we can be attracted to in others, especially if we're male, and what we also would believe makes us attractive. And you know, the funny thing about that, when I was a kid, because I have Venus in Pisces, I used to think that looking sad made you look really pretty.
Really?
Yes. And so I'd always try to master this ability to look sad.
People still do that.
Yeah. Well, probably a lot of them must have Venus in Pisces.
Yeah.
And you know, when I learned astrology, I thought, oh, that's funny. That's why I was doing that. My Venus in Pisces was motivating me.
Mm-hmm.
So since Venus is like Taurus, or not Venus is like Mercury, what signs might you think Venus might rule, since it rules two signs?
So love nature one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to say maybe my sign, but I'm not sure. Sagittarius.
No. It's okay if you can't figure this out.
Yeah, this one might be harder.
Yeah.
Libra?
Yes, that's right. Libra is one of the signs Venus rules.
I know they're relationship oriented, or
Yes.
It's not going to be Aquarius, because that's like...
No, it's actually Taurus. I almost gave it away because I almost said Taurus.
Taurus? I was thinking Taurus, but I thought we just talked about Taurus and Mercury, so I didn't think that. But
Yeah,
you're right.
we talked about Taurus with the moon. We talked about Taurus with the moon because the moon is exalted in Taurus.
So it's Taurus again. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Because we're going to be.
That's where I get tripped up. Is like, okay, because it can always, after this Okay. After the sun and the moon, it's more than one, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So every planet is going to only be exalted in one sign, but it's
Okay.
going, after the sun and the moon, all the traditional planets are ruling two signs. So Venus rules Taurus and Venus rules Libra.
Okay.
But, and there's a planet exalted in Libra, which we'll get to, but Taurus right now has two of its planets that we've talked about. So the moon is exalted in Taurus and Venus rules Taurus. So then if we look at that, Venus is love, and it's ruling the sign that moon is sitting in. Now moon loves love. Moon is its emotionally needy sign, needy planet. It's feeling all the time, and it might feel a little lonely. So if it goes and sits in Taurus, there's Venus looking after it going, oh, nice little moon.
Yeah.
The moon goes, ah, oh, I have a physical body now, and I have someone to care for me. And that's what they want to give to other people too. A lot of times moon and Taurus people are often very affectionate.
Okay.
So that's where we're starting to get a feel for the way these things are linked together, the way planets and signs are all linked together and working together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so next on the list we have Earth, and that circle cross at the top is the most common symbol for Earth. That symbol is also used in an astrological, I don't know what you would call it, an astrological system, or something that is created, called the part of fortune, which we are not going to get into right now, but that symbol is used for that as well. And we're not going to really talk about Earth, because Earth does not actually rule any signs, although we could say Earth kind of rules Taurus, but it's not really a planet that we're using when we're working with the interactive aspect of the whole chart.
Really? Yeah, because I would have said Taurus, because it's like I equate Taurus to grounding.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
what we talk about the most with that sign.
Okay. Yes, yeah, for sure. No, Taurus has a very special relationship to the Earth, no question. Okay, so next planet would be Mars. Now, I actually remember when I was taught astrology, that arrow is actually just considered to be a different form of the cross of matter. It's the cross of matter being transformed into trying to get somewhere in this physical world. So, so we have the circle of personality with the cross of matter being turned outwardly and going towards something. That's the meaning of, that's the symbolism of Mars. So Mars is the personality trying to do something in this world.
So would this be Aquarius then?
Is what?
Would this be Aquarius then in this sign? Because I'm trying to think of Aquarius as building things or like putting things together, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it does, for sure. But yeah, no, that's not the ruler of Aquarius, no, though.
No.
Yeah, Mars is the equivalent of Venus, in that Venus is our love nature, Mars is our sexual nature. Venus is the more feminine concept of expression, Mars is a more masculine concept of expression. Venus is what our sort of dreamy desire. Mars goes out and gets it. Venus says, I want this, and Mars goes, I'll get it for you, little lady. And this is and you can actually look at, again, you can look at a person's chart. Where's their Venus? That's their kind of dream. If you look at the sign it's in, if you look at the sign Mars is in, that's how they're going to go out and try to get that dream. That's how they're going to go out and try to pursue somebody or something. Their energy level. And also in a person's chart, Venus has to do with how mom acted towards us when we were children, whereas the moon is how she actually felt. So that can be very interesting if you look at people's charts. Sometimes the moon and Venus are so different. So mom was feeling one way, but she acted really differently towards the child, for good or for ill. And sometimes they're in the same sign, which means mom was expressing exactly who she was towards the child, once again, for good or for ill. Mars has to do with how dad was acting, whereas the sun has more to do with sort of a symbol of how what he was really feeling, what he was really being. So we have these two levels of male and female, the sun and the moon on a more higher archetypal level, and then Venus and Mars in a more active, real, physical world level. So if Mars is going out there and getting stuff, and Mars is that sexual energy, that masculine energy, it's not Aquarius. What other sign or signs might you possibly associate Mars with.
Oh, God.
And again, you're getting harder, so you don't have to get it right.
Libra?
Nope, we already did Libra. That's Venus rules Libra.
Right. And they're more, so they're more action oriented, right?
Yeah. There's this drive.
Action oriented. That's why I thought of Libra, because it's not Aquarius. Capricorn is goal oriented.
Yes. We'll bookmark that one.
Okay. I don't think it would be Pisces.
Nope.
It's not Aquarius. Scorpio, no. Well,
actually, it's Scorpio. Yes, actually, Scorpio is one of the signs that Mars rules, and Mars also, and Mars also rules Aries. Now, there's another component here, is that each of the elements has a gender. Which was one thing we didn't cover when we were talking about the 4 elements. Earth and water is considered to have a feminine gender, which basically means these are more receptive elements. And air and fire are considered to have masculine genders, which means they're more expressive, active elements. Now, each of these, I guess you'd call them personality planets, or more traditional planets other than the sun and the moon, they each rule a sign of one of each gender. So if we go back to Mercury, Mercury rules Gemini, which is a masculine gendered sign, and it rules Virgo, which is a feminine gendered sign. Venus rules Taurus, which is feminine gender, and Libra, which is masculine gender. Mars rules Aries, which is a masculine gender, and Scorpio, which is feminine. So we're really looking at the masculine and the feminine sides of these planets.
So it's always masculine and feminine for those 2 signs? Okay,
yes, that's right. Yeah. And traditionally, they also talk about the day side and the night side of a planet. So Mars rules, Aries is the day side of Mars, and Scorpio is the night side of Mars. And if you think about that in a poetic sense, it makes a lot of sense, because Aries is just, let's get out there. We're going to do it right now, and we'll get everything done. Let's get out there in the world. They're very open. They're jumping towards something, and there's nothing hidden. Scorpio, I'm skulking around at night to get what I want. I've got a plan. We're in fixed water, so there's a very fixed, determined sense of emotion that's sitting there plotting and planning its goal, and it's going to stay up all night and work out how to get this done, because it's got a fixed attention to what it's feeling.
That's interesting. I never really thought of Scorpio that way, of like I know they're a little bit more stubborn,
right?
Fixed, yeah. But I wouldn't have thought that they were like perceived as maybe like planning and goal oriented. So that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they're doing that so much that they're not actually taking action. So they're sitting there plotting at night, but when it comes to daytime, well, they're going to wait till the next night to do some more planning.
But yeah, like I'm sure it will come together like once I start learning even more about them, because
absolutely,
it's starting to make more and more sense. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. And I forgot to mention with Venus that Venus in Taurus is in a fixed earth sign. So there we're looking at what are the things that I physically need to fulfill my desires when we're looking at Venus in Taurus. And it's very much about a very kind of unchanging or very slowly changing concept of what love and beauty really are about in terms of fulfilling needs. Venus in Libra, we have a cardinal air sign. So that's another aspect of Venus, which is out there being the social butterfly. So Venus in Libra, I've got my goals for what I want with relationships. I'm going to talk to lots of people. I'm going to go speed dating. Venus in Taurus is like, I know what I need, and when I see it, I'm going to grab it, or I'm going to make sure it grabs me. I'm going to have that. Those are sort of the two sides of what Venus is about. And I also forgot to mention where Venus is exalted. So Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, which brings out the highest of Venus. And that makes a tremendous amount of sense because Venus is dreamy and idealistic. It's mutable water. So Venus in Pisces is very compassionate and empathic. A person with Venus in Pisces is an empathic lover. They feel what their loved one is feeling. So it makes the love nature unselfish. Whereas if you look at Venus in Taurus and Venus in Libra, we've really got the Venus thing really happening in a really full way, but it's not as idealistic as when you put it in Pisces. So we really have the most idealistic dreams possible when you put Venus in Pisces. And then that also, again, tells us something about the sign of Pisces. That again, there's a kind of idealization of love, of all forms of love, not just romantic love, that sign has within its soul an element of expression of. So then to go to Mars's exaltation, that's why I said to bookmark Capricorn, because Mars is exalted in Capricorn, which makes total sense because Capricorn is goal-oriented Earth. If you put Mars in Capricorn, Mars, it's like Mars goes to boot camp and gets trained and strengthened to fulfill the goals. A person who has Mars in Capricorn usually almost always has an enormous amount of energy to put into their work in life. It really, it's like it disciplines Mars. Mars is the warrior. He's meant to be disciplined. Just like Venus is the lover, she's meant to be idealistic. That's why you put Venus in Pisces. Okay, so now we're moving on to Jupiter. And with Jupiter, we have the crescent of spirit with the cross of matter. And Jupiter almost looks like an artistic four. But what's interesting, and we're not going to do Saturn yet, but if you look at Jupiter and Saturn, if you turn one of them upside down, you have the other one, basically. They're not drawn exactly the same, but they are basically the same symbols, just turned upside down. Which makes complete sense because they do represent higher principles of our earthly development with the opposite approach to those two principles being taken. So Jupiter's expansion, Saturn is contraction, Jupiter is freedom, Saturn is responsibility. Now, crescent is of spirit linked nicely to the cross of matter. So they are also both philosophical planets, where spirit is working to inform and guide the material plane. And in Jupiter's case, spirit's on top. So spirit is the more dominant force of this symbol. And Jupiter is the largest planet in the solar system. And in old traditional astrology, it was said that Jupiter was the preserver of life. And that's said in Eastern and Western astrology. That's an old saying. Well, what did the astronomers find out a few decades ago? That Jupiter actually literally has protected complex life on Earth. And it does that because Jupiter is so huge and so massive and has such a gravitational effect that a vast majority of all the little asteroids floating around without an orbit and bits of matter that float through the galaxy get sucked into Jupiter and instead of hitting the Earth. If without Jupiter, we'd have so many asteroid impacts that we would never have developed complicated life on Earth. We'd have to keep starting over again all the time. It's pretty amazing. So Jupiter is the protector. Jupiter is expansion, goodwill. Spiritually speaking, it's about divine grace. Where we have Jupiter in our birth chart is in the house that we have Jupiter in the birth chart, and sometimes the sign. is representative of an area of life where we lacked in previous lifetimes, and we no longer need to experience that lack. And it does not serve our growth and development. So we're going to be given gifts to help us to realign that area of life. So it's an area of life where you're always lucky, where you're always helped. It's divine assistance. Yeah. And so Jupiter being the understander, the planet that understands humor and higher philosophy and how to free ourselves and how to receive pure spirit and the love of the divine consciousness. That's what Jupiter is about. So what signs do you think Jupiter might rule?
Oh my God. Oh God. Okay. Like I know my sign is openness to life.
That's right. Yeah. And truth. Mm-hmm.
Truth. But I'm not sure if I'd be more Saturn or Jupiter.
Yeah, that's interesting because Sun in Sagittarius goes in second stage. A lot of them get quite Saturnian.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you're probably saying that, but it is, your sign is ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter rules Sagittarius.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. It's the philosopher, and it's seeking the truth, and it's the expansion towards spiritual understanding is what the real goal is of the sign.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
And then Pisces is the feminine sign that Jupiter rules. And it's about that sense of bounty. In a sense, Sagittarius is in a masculine way seeking truth, and Pisces is in a feminine way almost trying to serve truth, trying to let truth flow through it.
Okay.
But they both have very idealistic aspirations in terms of what they want to give to the world, in terms of wanting to give the world what Jupiter represents. So then we have a sign that exalts Jupiter, and that's a very interesting sign, a very interesting meaning to that. Jupiter is exalted when it's in the sign of Cancer.
Okay.
Which is quite interesting because, and when Jupiter is in Cancer, it's from a spiritual perspective, it means that at least in some pretty important area, the person has been given some real gifts in their early childhood. Because Jupiter is divine grace. And what's the best time in your life to get divine grace?
Oh, in childhood?
Yeah, because then you've got that as a foundation for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
No point in getting it when you're 85. You don't really have as much use for it.
Yeah.
It would still help, I'm sure. And there's no 85-year-old that would turn it down.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it'd be much nicer to get it when you're a little kid. Get it as you're forming yourself and forming your life.
What's the sign that's above Jupiter there? That Ceres.
Oh yeah, Ceres is one of the asteroids in the asteroid belt.
Okay.
And that's why it comes after Mars, because we're moving away from the sun. So right after Earth comes Mars, and then in between Mars and Jupiter, there would have been a planet there. There was a space for a planet, but that body broke into pieces. So there's the asteroid belt there. There are 4 asteroids. They're the biggest 4 asteroids that were probably the first ones to be discovered. And a lot of astrologers look at them and utilize them. And I do to a certain extent too. But again, that's not the primary focus of the basics of astrology right now.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the symbol for the asteroid of Ceres. Okay, so let's see what I was looking at. Oh, so in terms of the signs, a little more about the signs Jupiter rules is that they're both mutable signs. So once again, to be mutable is to be open to the truth in the moment. Now, we have all 4 mutable signs are ruled by either Mercury or Jupiter. And Mercury is the lower mind looking for knowledge and information. And Jupiter is the higher mind seeking spiritual truth and understanding. And we've covered all the mutable signs are being ruled by these 2 signs, or these 2 planets of Mercury and Jupiter. And mutable is openness, and it's a sense of being in the moment, because the only way to perceive truth is to be in the moment and receive it. And then the two signs are a water sign and a fire sign. So Sagittarius, the fire sign, Pisces, the water sign. And those are the more mystical elements because water is about deep feeling. So Pisces has this complete openness to deep feeling. So of course it's going to receive Jupiter very easily. Sagittarius has the passion for life and is open to truth. And this is why it makes perfect sense for Jupiter to rule it. So, okay, so Saturn is the final planet in the traditional planets, which were the planets that could be seen by the naked eye. And we will have all of the 12 signs having a ruler, and a lot of them have an exalted planet by the time we get finished with Saturn. Now, the more newly discovered planets become co-rulers of certain signs. That's what we'll cover later on. We're not going to do that today. But Saturn puts the crescent of spirit below the cross of matter. And the crescent of spirit is also related to the moon, so it's the subconscious. So we really have a symbolism of the subconscious if we put the crescent of spirit down underneath. So Saturn in the birth chart has a lot to do with our oldest karmic impressions that we carry into a lifetime. They're sitting down underneath our physical body. The Saturnian karmic fears and repeated patterns of error are actually physically seated at the base of the spine in our body. That's where, and this is why sometimes when you feel fear, you feel it coming from that part of the body first. The creeping fear comes from down below. But it's also about how the crescent of spirit actually supports matter. So Saturn is very much a planet of deep wisdom. So Saturn's about fear, but Saturn's about profound wisdom. And Saturn's about karma, which is about earning the results that we experience in life. So Jupiter's about grace. God loves you, so just God wants to give you everything that's just great for you. Just here, have tons of gifts. Saturn says you must earn what you receive and you must pay for what you've done. There are two very opposite views, and they're both absolutely necessary in order of things. So Saturn is very, let's work for things, let's build things, let's make things last. Saturn believes in perfecting us and perfecting our souls and perfecting our expression in this material world. So spirit is the roots of that physical cross of matter. So Saturn being very traditional and well-structured and serious, what signs do you think it might rule?
Oh my God. Serious? Serious. I don't know why I'm obsessed with Aquarius today, but
yeah, well, that is one of the signs.
I know that they're trying to fix the social good. Like, I know that.
Yeah, the Sun in Aquarius is trying to do that, yes.
Who haven't we talked about?
Yeah, who's left?
Left.
There's also a natural order to the planets' rulerships.
Yeah, like I think I need to.
In terms of the seasons, because the Sun and Moon rule Leo and Cancer right in the thick of summer. Slowly move out on either side. So from on either side of Cancer and Leo are Gemini and Virgo, ruled by Mercury. And beside them, as we move towards the spring and the fall, are Taurus and Libra, ruled by Venus. And then as we're really in the early spring and the late fall, we have Aries and Scorpio, ruled by Mars. There's a natural progression towards the winter as we get to the planets that are further away from the sun.
So it's going to be a winter sign?
Yes. So Aquarius is one of them. Aquarius, Saturn is a traditional ruler of Aquarius.
It's not Gemini then. Is it?
No, but Saturn likes Gemini a lot when Saturn's in Gemini.
Mm-hmm. It's not Pisces?
Nope,
No.
it's not Pisces. That was Jupiter. It's Capricorn.
Capricorn, the mountain goat. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Because the mountain goat has to face his fears if he's going to climb up that mountain. And he's going to have to be really practical if he's going to get up that mountain also.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have Saturn ruling a cardinal earth sign, which makes perfect sense because Saturn has the goal of perfection in this earthly world. Saturn wants us to get truly perfected, it has to reach the deepest levels of the physical. That's a law of life. A lot of times spiritual people tend to think spiritual perfection means leaving the physical, but spiritual perfection means mastering the physical, because if you've ignored some of your lessons in the physical, you have not achieved spiritual perfection. And then we have the Saturn in ruling Aquarius, and Aquarius is fixed air. So Saturn's wanting to perfect humanity. Let's make fixed social structures that will express the highest of human potential. So Saturn's a little scary and he's a little harsh, but he's really got very strong, positive, lasting intentions. So there's an old astrological saying that Saturn gives as much gold as he does lead. So even if Saturn's a bit hard on us, Saturn wants things to really, really work. And absolutely, gold is a perfect metal. It's molecularly more perfected than anything else on the physical plane. And Saturn is exalted in Libra. So Libra brings the best out in Saturn because Libra makes sure Saturn's going to be fair. Don't be so harsh. But at the same time, Libra will not let people escape what's just. And our deepest learning experiences take place in relationships, intimate relationships. It's another meaning of Saturn being exalted in Libra. And that also talks about how Libra, and when it perfects itself, is about not just about personal relationships, but about a higher sense of justice being implemented in a form that serves us all. So, is your brain tired yet?
Yeah, this is a hard one. I have to restudy this after. I'm sure I have to map it out for myself. I think that will help.
Yeah. And again, take the circle of the zodiac in your mind and the seasons that the signs are in, and if you can get any visual images in your mind of, like for instance, Leo, there's that lion and it's all sunny and bright, and the sun is there ruling that sign, and then in Cancer it's deep blues and the image of the crab, and the moon is there, and Jupiter is in there really wanting to nurture everything beautifully because it's exalted in Cancer. You kind of get the images and move your way all the way into the winter. So again, that's why it's important to really get into the feeling of all of these things.
Yeah. No, that's great. So the last few ones are the ones that we'll do another time, where they're co-leaders, you said?
That's right. And those are the newly discovered planets that could not be seen by the naked eye, although occasionally Uranus actually has been seen by the naked eye, but it's pretty tough and you have to have pretty special eyes. But in general, since the 1700s, slowly there have been other planets that people have been discovering, and they represent changes in human society that correspond to those planets. So there's a lot of interesting information about the newer planets, but these old traditional 7 planets are very foundational. And now I know why I was doing this funny little thing in my head in the last couple of days. I was singing the theme of Gilligan's Island. And then I started thinking, why am I singing this? And then I started thinking, well, all the characters on Gilligan's Island, they're the 7 traditional planets. So then I want to write a little, I don't know for what purpose, if I'll ever get a chance to even do it, but write a little story about how each of these 7 characters on Gilligan's Island are the 7 traditional planets.
It's the connections that help though, right?
Yeah, exactly. If I'm
going to map it out for myself, I think that will help. Just like take a look at the circle and just.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.